Hi guys, today I want to show you one of those pastry recipes I learned in my pastry school. This particular recipe is a bit challenging for a lot of us, so I thought I'll make a video of it. So I'm going to show you how to make the pastry base, which is a tart based base. I have a tart pan. You can use a regular round tart pan too, and this one comes with a detachable base. So it's easy for me to lift off when it's baked. So for the tart base, I need 200 grams of plain flour. This is just regular all-purpose plain flour. If you want looking for gluten-free recipe, you can try coconut flour. You can even try any nut-based flour. But this is just regular plain flour. Do not use self-raising flour. It has extra baking soda and baking powder, and you don't want it to rise. Okay, so this is 200 grams of plain flour. To that, I'm going to add in a pinch of salt. I'm going to add in 20 grams of icing sugar. You can add in fine granulated sugar. If you don't have icing sugar, just blend the sugar into your blender, and you should have kind of fine, fine powdered sugar. The reason why I'm using icing sugar is it's easy to blend into the pastry. That's 20 grams that goes in, all of it. And I've got one cold egg. Now before I add in the egg, the most important thing is the first step. Mix this all up. To this, I'm going to add about 90 grams. I will post the recipe. 90 grams of unsalted butter. And what I have done is I've cut it into tiny bits like this, so that it's easy for me to incorporate into the dough. So just going to add this in. Now a little tip on this pastry base on how to make this. There's a few tips you need to follow, and a few points you need to follow to make sure you get it right. First of all is using the butter. If you use really soft butter, what happens is the dough gets really mushy and difficult to handle. So this is cold, but it's soft. You can feel it. The temperature is lightly cold, but it's soft. So it's easy for me later to handle it. Okay, and the next tip you need to follow is you got to make sure you do not use this part of your palm or your hand. So you use only your fingers. Reason? From here on, the body temperature is warmer, and so it makes the butter a little more softer and dissolves in, and that makes it difficult to handle the dough in the process. So I'm just going to use my fingers and let the butter kind of mix in with the dough. What you get is a sand-like texture. Let me show you that. This is a little the only part that takes a bit of time, a bit of patience. But do it right and your final product is going to be good. So what I'm doing is rubbing the butter into the flour. So what you want to make sure is that every bit of butter, every blob of butter has got incorporated into the flour. The reason is if you've got blobs of butter in the dough, when you roll it out, it's going to stick onto the rolling pin. It's going to be difficult to handle. There you go. That's it. Beautiful sand-like texture. This is what you're looking for, crumble. This is it. Just to this, I'm going to add one cold egg. Again, butter was lightly cold. Egg also is right out of the chiller, and it's just one egg. Now again, if you're using A-grade egg, it's about 50 grams of egg. Now I'll give you a little tip on if you're not sure whether this is enough or not. I'm going to show you while I mix the dough. I'm going to tell you when to tell whether you've got enough liquid to mix the dough or not. So this is 50 grams, which is 1 egg. That goes in, and then slowly break it up and mix it together. Again, I'm not kneading the dough. You can see I'm still using my fingertips to just bring it together. Now if you're using a smaller egg, so you will not have enough liquid to mix and bring the dough together. And what do you do in that case? You just sprinkle a tiny bit of water. Not too much, because you don't want the dough to be too soft. If you want to use a stand mixer, you can use a stand mixer or a regular hand mixer too. But make sure you run this on a very low speed, because you don't want the flour everywhere, and you don't want to overbeat it because you're building gluten in it. Okay, so I'm not kneading it, I'm just bringing that together. There you go. So I still have little bits of flour at the base. It's coming together. So like I said, if you feel you need to add in a little water, just a few drops, sprinkle, that's it. And there you go. Just rolling it in the bowl. I'm not kneading it. And using my fingers again to just bring it together to make a little dough. There you go. Now this goes into the chiller to rest for 30 minutes. I cling wrap this just to make sure I can roll it out evenly. I just try to evenly kind of flatten this on the sides and the edges. This is cling wrap, goes into the chiller for 30 minutes, and I'm going to roll it out. So this has been chilling for 30 minutes. Now before I start, I'm going to use the tabletop here. You can use a silk pad, you can use the silicone mat, is what I mean. You can use a wooden chopping board, but I'm just going to use tabletop. That's it. Clean surface. I've got my tart pan really close to me, chopping board and flour. Now a little tip here again on how to sprinkle flour. Don't do that. You throw it onto the surface. Reason is you've got an even layer of flour. There you go. Smooth all of this. And if you're not used to making a pastry, I would suggest be really generous with the flour, because if it sticks, it's a little difficult and breaks also. So be generous. It's okay. Little extra flour doesn't hurt. And that goes over it. Again, a little more flour. I know it's a lot of flour, but at least I know it's safe. Okay, there you go. Let's move this and start rolling this. Now again, my pan is rectangle, which means I need to roll it to a rectangle rectangle length. Okay, so as I roll, what I do is, just to make sure I get it right, I kind of bring it together so I have less cracks. Again, at some point you will not be able to flip. So if you do want to flip, it should be earlier, when you're able to handle it, when you're able to hold it. So I'm going to flip it once, just to make sure I've got enough flour. That's it. And then roll it out. Go. There's a lot of flour, but I know it's not going to break. Okay. how to tell whether it's even or not, just rub your hands over it and you can feel it. I've got a little thickness here, so I'm going to roll that out. Here it's just perfect. Go. Okay, again, now how do I know how much to roll it out? What I do is I place the tart pan over it. What I want is extra bit of flour for these edges. So let's say this is about 1 to 2 inch. I would roll out 2.5 to 3 inches. So what you can do is use your fingers and then approximately, if it's this line, I use a little more than that just to make sure it flips over and I've got enough dough over the edges. Okay, so let's say a little more on the sides and it's done. Perfect. Can feel it, it's nice and even. Now there's 2 ways to put this dough onto the tart pan. One is, I've seen some people, they cut it into pieces and they paste it out, which means, you know, stitch it up. You could do that, or I'm going to show you another trick. Okay, so I take the top edge and bring it together. Literally roll it into the pin and then unroll. Ta-da! Isn't that beautiful? So satisfying. Okay, so again, now how do you tuck it in? Lift and tuck, lift and tuck, lift and tuck. I'm not using thumb, I'm not using, you know, pressure. I'm just going to use this and I'm probably going to use the thumb, the entire thumb. Okay, so lift and tuck, lift and tuck, lift and tuck. Just to make sure you've got those little edges, the little sides sealed in so it does not lift up when you're baking. Lift and tuck, lift and tuck, lift and tuck. For me, this is stress buster. Just making pastry dough. Okay, so again, if you want to get this finish, just make sure you follow these little tips and tricks of using cold butter, using cold egg, not over kneading, using your fingertips, not overdoing it. Because what happens is when you over knead the dough, it becomes really hard to handle. It stretches and then you'll start seeing it coming back. So that's not what you want. You just want to keep it really pliable. You know, you want to keep it really soft. Okay, that's it. I just make sure you've got these edges covered. These edges covered all over, especially the corners. And now for the extra dough, to take it off, the excess on the sides, take your rolling pin and just roll it over. There you go. I would use this for another small tart. Now if you have excess dough, try not to freeze it because I find freezing kind of very difficult for me to roll it out again. Chiller is fine for up to a day or two, nothing more than that. Take it out of the chiller until it comes back to the same consistency. Again, don't over knead this, just bring it back together and then knead it again. Done. Okay, so that's it. Look at this gorgeous pastry tart base. That's done. That's it. Now how do you bake this? Let me show you. So before that, you got to make sure you put little holes with a fork. There you go. The reason why you're doing this is when it bakes, you know, the air bubbles kind of don't go inside the base and you get a really even base. Okay, just letting the air out. I want to make sure every bit is covered. That's it. Now what I usually do, if I have to bake this, there's 2 ways of doing it. First of all, I would not put this directly into the oven. I would let this rest. I would let it chill so the butter kind of hardens and then bake it. Meanwhile, the oven is heating up at 175 degrees Celsius, and just to make sure the pastry base kind of rises evenly and bakes evenly, I have a baking sheet here. I place that over it and put something heavy. So it could be anything. Now you even can buy the bean weight. So I don't want to spend and then leave it stocked up. So I usually use anything heavy like beans, like dal, rice. I have rice here, and I reuse this rice. So I put them back into the Ziploc bag. Okay, that's it. So what you want to make sure is all of the rice is spread out so that every bit of it has weight. So you can see that the pastry will bake evenly. You don't want it to come up from one, either side. So you want to make sure the rice is all over. This is just to ensure that you've got a really evenly baked pastry shell. That's it, done. For pre-baking, what do? It goes into the oven for 12 to 15 minutes, depending on your oven. I do not want to give you the exact timing. How I would tell you is to look out for brown edges, lightly brown edges, golden brown edges. Then I pull it out once it's done, and then let's see, and then put it back into the oven just to dry up the base. So if there's any moisture there, it dries up. The entire process should take you about 12 minutes max, nothing longer than that. And then you put in the filling, whichever filling you want to add in. Like if you want to do frangipani, which I will do in my next video, I'll show you how to make a pear frangipani tart. So you put in the filling and then you fully bake it. Now let's say if you want to have a fully baked tart, which is, let's say if you want to make a chocolate ganache tart. So you again pull out the weight, the rice weight, and then fully bake it until it's done, which will take you another 10 minutes. And then you put in your cold filling. It could be your custard filling for a fruit tart. It could be chocolate tart. So any filling of your choice. That's it. So that is a really 101 on how to make a pastry base. If you want to make a vegetarian base, which is without an egg, use the same amount of weight of an egg, which is about 50 to 60 grams of cold water. That's it. That becomes vegetarian. If you want to make a savory tart, completely skip your icing sugar and just add in a teaspoon or less than, let's say about half teaspoon of salt, and that's it. You want to flavor the base, you can add parsley, you can add dried herbs. Yep, you can even flavor it with cumin. That's it. So just follow these little tricks and tips what I gave you, and you will get close to perfect tart base. See you in my next video, which I'm going to show you how to make the filling.